The Torah tells us to always do the right thing. But is the thing that the Torah tells us always the right thing to do? In Parshat Emor, we're given many laws governing the life of the Kohen, of the priest descended of Aaron, whose job is to offer sacrifices in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash. And in order to safeguard the purity and the holiness of the Kohen, laws are put in place that problematically exclude anyone with physical disabilities from serving in the temple, as well as prohibit the Kohen from having what might otherwise be a wonderfully loving relationship with a divorcee or a convert. And finally, tells the Kohen that he must remain ritually pure in a state of tahara by avoiding the number one source of ritual impurity, which are dead bodies. And so the Kohen is not allowed to interact with the dead, is not allowed to go to funerals or bury the dead, which is otherwise a fantastically enormous mitzvah. Except the Torah immediately gives a list of exceptions. For his father, for his mother, for his sister or brother, and God forbid, for his children, the Kohen would be allowed to go into the cemetery. The rabbis in the Talmud already take a look at this list and say, that's very rigid, that's very tight, that's not enough. After all, we expect the Kohen to have a wife, he's got to bury her too. And so the rabbis expand that list and give the Kohen a little bit more breathing room in his relationships. And then we have the story of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Tzadok, who himself was a Kohen and was once seen running through the cemetery, over the graves, contracting all of that ritual impurity, all of that tum'ah, in order to greet the king. And not just the Jewish kings, but also the non-Jewish kings, which for the rabbis is a really big deal. Because if it was for the Jewish kings, then he's violating a law of the Torah in order to pay homage to God's chosen king. But for a non-Jewish king, well, that's a different matter entirely. That, the Talmud shows us, is a matter of respect. It's a matter of noticing what the right thing to do within that relationship is and acting with dignity towards the other person. And so the Talmud says, Tashma, come and listen, learn this principle, learn this rule. Gadol kvod habriot, shedoche et asur b'Torah. That human dignity, how great is the power of human dignity, that it can override even a prohibition of the Torah itself. Many times in our lives we end up in conflict between what the rules are and what we might know the right thing to do in that moment is. Generally, I would tell you to default to the rules of the Torah, but also to notice that when the principle that you are knocking up against is about how you are dealing in your relationships and your interactions with other people, that it's not something to be ignored. The weight, the strength, the power of human dignity that must inform our relationships, of love and respect and of holiness to each other.